Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about strongmen using performance enhancing compounds and for pharmaceuticals in general in the sport of strongman. This topic is very interesting, and honestly it reminds me of how bodybuilding was a few years ago. Not many people are talking about it. Big Laws and Robert Oberst have talked about it, but in all, we don't actually know. So what I'm going to be doing from here on is guesswork, but it's my proposed theories on the little knowledge I have on the subject. But just to remind everybody, I am not a doctor and I'm not a chemist, and I do not pretend to be either one of those things. I do not encourage the use of any substances, legal or illegal, in this video strictly for educational and entertainment purposes only. So without further ado, let's start off with anabolic androgenic steroids. I'm going to start with the long-term use category first because I think that it makes sense to divide this into two categories. So in this category, I have testosterone, nandrolone, ment, aka trestolone, tren, which I'm iffy about. I imagine a lot of them don't take it, but some of them do, maybe around competition. And I say long term, but that has a lot of side effects and way more toxicity than the others. And equipoise, aka boldenone. Another possible one that I would imagine is used is anavar, but I don't particularly see them using anavar. Anavar is mainly metabolized in the kidneys and does not serve to have a lot of any sort of liver or kidney toxicity. It's pretty much the only oral anabolic steroid that is known to be relatively well tolerated when used in the intermediate to long term. It was often used with AIDS patients, in fact. And others that are possibly used are Masteron and Primobolan, but I personally just don't see them being used. It's possible they use injectable Dianabol relatively long term, but I also don't see that as much of a possibility. But Masteron and Primobolan are really, in my opinion, the antithesis to what would be primarily used in the sport because they're more of quote-unquote dry compounds. But overall, they don't help facilitate a lot of neurological drive necessarily, and they don't seem to really interplay when it comes to advancing your strength goals. So in the short term, compounds that would be beneficial are Dianabol, Anadrol, check drops, which I believe is methylated trestolone or methylated ment, and oral trenbolone. So these ones in particular are interesting because they cause a lot of neurological drive and a lot of, I guess you could say, sympathetic nervous system drive. So where everything's being upregulated, they're becoming stronger, more powerful. But Dianabol and Anadrol, and I believe check drops as well, are really known for increasing the amount of water you hold. And with many people, as they know in powerlifting and other sports, the more water that you're holding, especially in your joints, the more powerful you become when you push those weights. Other possible ones are Turinabol and halotestin. These two would be more so for the aggression side than they would be for the intramuscular water and intramuscular or like intercellular fluid that helps to allow for pressing motions and overall just strength. Oral trenbolone, I put that on the list in terms of what was most likely used, but to be completely frank, I do not know. Oral trenbolone is kind of a weird topic. It's extremely toxic, even surprisingly compared to trenbolone. But overall, I don't really know. I just imagine that it would increase neurological drive so much by being how intense of a compound it is that it would help them to facilitate heavier and heavier lifts. All right, so moving on to other non-steroid compounds, we have MK677. MK677, also called ibutamorin, is a growth hormone secretagogue, which means that it increases the amount of growth hormone that your body quote-unquote naturally secretes. So it makes your body secrete more growth hormone. It does this via ghrelin, so it upregulates your hunger as well. That would be super beneficial for strong men. It would allow them to eat more and be able to recover better. I mean, there's an extreme amount of cascading effects from growth hormone. However, it would lead them to be relatively insulin resistant, which leads me to my next two, which are metformin is a possibility, but I don't know that for certain, which would help to keep insulin resistance low. and two, insulin itself, because they're taxing their bodies so much by the amount of carbohydrates that they're consuming that it's possible that just to keep their pancreas from getting overly taxed, they use insulin. I have heard of strongmen using insulin in the past, and some people have taken too much. It's a very dangerous compound if you don't know what you're doing. I mean, even people who are on the drug for life-saving purposes mess up. So it's it's one of those things, so to speak. The next one would be pretty much any SARM, selective androgen receptor modulator. In theory, they have less androgenic and anabolic effects on the internal organs and your internal structures and bone structure, and help more so with muscle skeletal issues. And this is all theory. They are being tested currently in clinical trials. The two that show promise most right now, or the three, would be RAD140, Ligandrol, and Ostarine. Ostarine showing some level of liver toxicity. But the reason I bring those three up is because they're the most studied, at least from what I know. But overall, some of them, like S23, seem to upregulate sympathetic nervous system drive. Which for the same reason that something like a halotestin would be good for sport, with upregulating your neurological system, that would also be good. Next is GW501516, aka Cardarine. Hopefully I did not mess that number up. Cardarine would be beneficial because Cardarine has the ability to basically be exercise in a bottle. It can help to, over the long term, decrease resting heart rate. It can help with cholesterol levels. It can help to increase your endurance, which in strongman you might not think is very useful. But a lot of the time in these competitions, it is go, go, go. There's not a ton of breaks, and the competitions aren't exactly easy, especially when it's a loading competition. Now, would it be as useful as somebody for a bicycle competition? No, the bicyclist is obviously going to get more out of it, but when it comes to strongman, it's not completely useless. Another one is going to be growth hormone. Obviously, I mentioned MK677 earlier. For the same set of reasons, it helps with recovery, it can help with bone regeneration, helps with ligament health. For them, it helps hold more water as well. But there is also the insulin resistance factor, which also plays into the next one I'm going to say, which is IGF-1. IGF-1 is insulin-like growth factor 1. IGF-1 has the ability to help increase basically the entire body's size, and it helps to upregulate how big you can get. The only thing is IGF-1 has theoretically been shown, I say theoretically because there's mixed evidence, so to speak, but it mainly favors in the direction of it increases your aging and makes you more prone to tumors and cancers. IGF-1 is a very fascinating compound. Some people claim, like Tony Huge claims, that it can blow you up in mass very fast, very quick. And overall, it can actually because it's insulin-like growth factor, can actually act as insulin a little bit, therefore helping some of the insulin sensitivity, or at least helping with the release of insulin so that your pancreas does not get too taxed. Overall, you would still deal with insulin resistance, but I digress. Not lastly, but next up is BPC-157. This one is known as a peptide. This is a peptide, meaning it's a cascade down from growth hormone, that is known specifically for healing. And it's very fascinating because a lot of athletes have been using it for healing for a while. It's theorized that Conor McGregor is utilizing something like this to help with his injury from, I think he broke his ankle during a fight. BPC-157 has been used in, so many different sports in which they're not tested, or at least not heavily scrutinized for using such compounds. But it is known as the healing peptide, so to speak. Next up, pretty much any peptide that excludes ones that are related specifically to weight loss. I mean, if you can think of a peptide that has some point of joint rejuvenation or any sort of health aspect that would help a strongman, I imagine they're either using it or they're using growth hormone to get it, because growth hormone cascades into a bunch of different peptides, as you know. And I would probably exclude things like HGH frag, which is for fat loss, but who knows? Maybe they're taking that one too. And lastly, EPO is a possible one. Erythropoietin is known to increase your red blood cells in your body. It's mainly used by distance athletes because it is very powerful at increasing your blood oxygen carrying capacity, which is extremely useful for people who run extreme distances or bike extreme distances or hike. However, it also increases your risk for blood clots, especially when you aren't doing those things and you're taking erythropoietin or EPO, as well as the fact that it is just overall very dangerous because it increases your propensity for heart attack and stroke. Now, there is some evidence that in the Tour de France it might actually be healthier to take EPO than to not because of how much they're burning through in oxygen carrying capacity in a day. But I digress. For Strongman, I imagine someone's probably taking it. I think it would be a bad idea, especially because all of the compounds, the steroid family compounds that I named before, are going to increase blood viscosity, which will make your blood thicker and your red blood cells more plentiful, therefore making you already more likely to have more oxygen carrying capacity and also more likely to have a heart attack or a stroke. Well, that is going to do it for the list today. I just want to remind you that when I talk about these substances, this is one, completely just kind of my guessing, as well as the fact that I'm not saying that anybody would be taking all of these at once. In fact, I would be quite concerned if they were, and they would probably be not around for a super long time. But overall, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have anything to add, specifically in terms of performance-enhancing content or performance-enhancing pharmaceuticals for Strongman, I would love to hear it. I think I'm going to do one on supplements in the same topic, but we will see. Overall, I hope you guys enjoyed sticking around for this long. If you did, please click the like button down below and hit the little notification bell next to it. Subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell next to it. And until next time, don't just have a good one, have a great one.